evening, everyone. It is December the 8th at 5:30, and we're calling the Safety Committee meeting to order. So I want to thank everybody for joining us, our guests and, of course, current team members. Are there any citizens' concerns that need to be expressed? Hearing, seeing none. Are there any concerns about the minutes that have previously been given? And if
no objections here.
Hearing none, those will be approved. And number 3 on the agenda, update on DORA, please. And I'm not sure.
Why don't you start, Steve? Okay, so before you is, I have no new legislation. You will see under Section 8 that when the DORA was passed on September 1st, that the city administration and city council shall review the requirements of the DORA as established herein 1 year after the effective date of the ordinance to determine whether to continue the DORA under the same or modified terms and conditions or to dissolve it according to statutory language. 1 year after the date of effectiveness would have been October 1st because it was not passed as an emergency, so we're a little behind, but we're reviewing it now. Before you is a copy of the DORA and a copy of the amendments that were made that, if you'll recall, we had some issues trying to have them create corporations because that didn't work, so we took some language out of the original DORA. The police chief has some information about both the good and the bad of what's happened with the DORA in the past year. Overall, my analysis as your law director is that it's been a success. There are some hiccups that we should talk about, but generally speaking, hasn't caused great difficulties for the city or anything like that. So there's some things we should talk about, maybe about the boundaries. But I'm going to let the police chief explain that, and then we can talk about that. But I have received no citizens' complaints or no one has contacted me as the law director to complain about this in any way.
So I would just like to first say thank you for having this calendar, even where we're a month or so behind. And will this be an annual review then? Is that
It's not required to be.
Okay.
The Ohio Revised Code requires that it be reviewed after 5 years. City of Perrysburg put in that it would be reviewed after 1 year. So after this review, it only has to happen after 5 years. It can, of course, be put on your agenda and discussed at any time that you want. It is not mandated by any law that it be reviewed until we hit the 5-year mark.
So certainly I don't know who the next chairman is going to be, but if I am so fortunate, then I would like to have this come back again next year. And I know you're good at calendaring. And
well, Elaine is, and I'll tell Elaine to put it on the calendar for next year.
Of course, if I'm not chairman, then you don't have to oblige.
Absolutely. If you want to talk about this every year, that is absolutely, we can put that on the calendar.
Because I have a feeling over time this will be tweaked. And if no, for another reason, boundaries or whatever. So, because if boundaries are proposed to be changed, then those should be reviewed as well. Then, so.
I think that proposal will have to come from you, and the chief has some comments on where we have had problems based on the current boundaries.
I am curious, while we're speaking of reviews, has there been anything done with the state? Because I know there was some interest, and then it didn't make it out of the Senate.
No,
so nothing more has been
significant has happened to this ordinance to change it in
Okay.
any way at the state level. We can still only have one because we're less than 35,000 people. Still can't be more than 150 square acres, I think it is.
Yeah,
contiguous acres. Still have to have at least 4 licensed liquor establishments in the DORA for us to have a DORA because we're less than 35,000 people. All of those rules still exist.
And that's a piece I didn't, there needs to be at least 4, is that what you just said?
Yes, at least 4.
Gotcha.
And we're fine right now. Because inside the 5 has a liquor permit. Is in the DORA, and Perrysburg, I believe, has a liquor permit, as well as Swig, and Zingos, and Stella's. So,
I didn't know Perrysburgers did.
Yes. So
I think it's
That's news to me, too.
I know that they applied from what I can figure out.
Who's that?
Perrysburg?
Yeah, I signed up on it, so.
So I believe that they at least applied for it and we signed up on it, so I
Good.
think they have one.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so we even have a little cushion.
Yes. We like cushions.
Yes. Are there any other questions for me?
Yeah, Kate, there's some chatter about allowing a second DORA, like that may get changed, the population restriction?
I have not seen anything come through any of my listservs or anything that I review from state when I get notices about changes to laws. I did double check in my Westlaw to make sure that I had the most up-to-date copy of the ordinance as it stood to confirm that particular issue, and thus far, nothing has changed.
And nothing's even being, in other areas being requested that, like somewhere, we have a situation where this could very well, we have two really good spots for a DORA with the population not being high enough.
That was the legislation that was before the state.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking
There was
of.
two different pieces.
Mhm.
One had to do with carrying out alcohol containers for restaurants during COVID.
Yeah.
And the other was loosening up the restrictions and actually not requiring any action to be taken by a municipality or a township for DORA to form and exist. That legislation ended up dying.
Okay,
And I haven't heard anything about that legislation being brought back.
gotcha, all right.
How about the carryout piece?
They did make some changes to that section of state law for the carry out liquor.
They made it permanent, I think what they did was they made it permanently legal, whereas the law had been put into effect temporarily as part of COVID
He's nodding his head.
regulations. And I'm assuming both of these gentlemen know that, and then it was made,
Way better than I do.
it was made a permanent part of essentially what had been put into effect as part of COVID became permanent law in the state of Ohio.
Okay.
Deborah?
That was my question. My question was, it says on here, I hear you say October 1st? Because I think it says on here September 1st.
It was passed September 1st.
Right.
It was not passed as an emergency, and therefore would not have been in effect until October 1st. And in fact, there's a fairly good legal argument to say that because we had to amend it to allow for changes because there were parts of this that were drafted that were impossible to do, it didn't actually go into effect until those amendments were done because nobody could be in the DORA until we did those amendments. So we're within time for the review.
Anything else?
I do have one other question. Do you know why they were not done prior to that? The amendments were not finished? Why they were not done? Why they were not completed?
The amendments were all completed.
You just said they were not completed. And you had to
The
do
permit
something.
holders came back to city council, if you will recall,
Right.
and asked for amendments to be made. City council listened to that and acted upon that, but that didn't happen until spring of this year, when the permit holders figured out that with some being a brewing license, some being just a retail license, they could not form an entity that had one umbrella liability insurance policy, I believe was the case. So they came back to city council in either March or April of this year, and city council took action at that time.
So the DORA itself didn't even begin until after those amendments were passed.
And that's April.
That's April.
April,
Yes.
okay. We're more like 6 months.
So we're kind of early,
Yeah, we're actually early.
depending upon how you want to look at it.
Thank you. Jones?
Good evening. So, going into the DORA, when we started this discussions, it seems like a couple of years ago now, there was I guess it would be hesitation, the unknowns on our part on what this was going to bring, if it was going to bring any issues, if it was not going to bring issues, if it was going to be a fruitful endeavor or not. I think overall, I would agree with Ms. Andretto that, I think it's been a positive for the city. Where we did have some issues, and these were things that I think you can see how it would happen. The issues that we ran into were on, the green space right in front of inside the 5, which technically is not in the DORA because of the way the boundaries were laid out. That tended to be, tell where it is on that page.
That's their street.
Yeah. Okay.
If you go into your packets, the first the first exhibit right there is the map. And you can see Louisiana and 3rd Street and the alley.
Yes.
And that's inside the 5.
And there's that green
And
space.
that's the green space he's
Yeah.
talking about.
Where the building fell down.
Yeah, where the building fell down. So this green space right here.
Right.
So he's just, that's what we're referring to.
Yep.
Very familiar with it. In fact, I brought it up right here.
Thank you.
So that tended to be a natural gathering space for people. But technically it wasn't in the door, so technically the people that were drinking there were, in violation of open container law. So, when we look at boundaries, that would be, one area definitely we need to make sure is in any expanded boundary, to make sure it's there. I still believe there's probably a chance they're gonna put a building there at some point, so that may go away, but in the meantime, that's there. The other area where we had some issues would be on Farmers Market night, where we had the food trucks on Louisiana Avenue by the library there. That side of the tracks was not in, and people are out walking around. You see, you're drinking your beer, you see a food truck, you're naturally going to walk towards the food truck. So we did give some warnings to people in that area. 3 different people were warned for not having the beer outside the Dora. And then the other area where we see it would be at Music at the Market on Farmers Market nights. People would walk over to the Commodore building, or they would walk over to the car show with it. Two things there that we need to consider. One, again, it's not in the Dora, but also that is school board property. So that would be up to the school board if they would want to. If we look at expanding the Dora, if they want that in the Dora or not. I did have a conversation with Superintendent Hostler about that, and that is something that apparently several years ago was brought up to the school board about allowing it. The school board at that time, maybe were you on it at that time, was a no. So you're familiar with the history there. So, I don't know with the current school board if that would be a yay or nay on their part, but that's something that, we obviously need to take into consideration when we look at the boundaries of the Dora. Other problems, minor problems that we'd have is we'd find some Dora cups. Our service department would find them down at the foot of Louisiana Avenue, down closer to the boat docks, which is obviously outside the Dora. With parks being there, we have a specific ordinance that prohibits alcohol in the parks. So I do not, unless they have a permit, and there are certain times we can allow that, but in general, I'm not for having the alcohol in the parks. I would like to stay away from that. So those were the problems. So not a huge amount of problems, but they were there. We took this first year of Dora as that we're going to use this education. We're going to warn people and say, you can't have it there. You need to get back into the Dora boundaries. But going forward, like with anything else, you can't warn people forever. So we're going to start taking more enforcement action on that this coming year to address that. Looking at right now we basically have an L shape with a little stub by inside the 5. From an enforcement standpoint, from a practicability standpoint, squares and rectangles are nice, in my opinion. Going into this, I'll be upfront and honest with you. My first choice would have been to put it at Levis. I thought that was a better location for it. Regardless, we have it here now. We kind of looked at it being downtown, but I would not be opposed if we're going to expand it. Maybe from Walnut to Elm Street, so have it go 1 block each way from Louisiana. Continue to have Front Street as the northern border. I would be against putting it in the parks. And then, as far as the southern border, if you expand it to 5th Street, you could then include the 5th Street Pub, which is another permit holder in this Dora. But you also then have to look at that, the piece of property there the Commodore building is on, and whether or not the school board, would want to have that in there. you know, whether we expand it to Indiana or we expand it to Fifth Street without the Commodore area, and because the school board doesn't want it there, you know, that's just something we're going to, you know, have to work on. And, you know, we'll have an officer there on the car show nights, we'll have an officer there on the farmers market nights, and so we can address those issues. But, you know, having the L shape, you know, I think limits it, and I'm not opposed to expanding it.
Chief, I would say, I actually live in the historic district, and I've seen cups throughout the area after different events, thrown in people's yards. I've seen them in the street. I don't think it looks really very nice from that standpoint. I think the boundaries, I am not a big fan of Dora.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think where it is right now is fine, and just leave it alone. That would be my thought. So you get into expanding more, and people are going to be complaining more, and I don't know if you probably want to have to deal with all of that.
And, you know, and with any expansion, we are still going to have to go through the process we went through before with the initial door. We're going to have to, you know, put a public notice out for it. We're going to have a public hearing for it. And so that's where it's going to be important to get the input from, you know, the people, especially the people who live in that potentially expanded area. You know, I know there's some other members of council who, you know, would like to expand it. But that's going to be a discussion that, you know, this next council is going to have to take. But, you know, this is my opinion for what it's worth, you know, going forward as we look at this.
Chief, you said you had 3 warnings over by the food trucks?
Yes.
The entire summer, only 3?
That's what we were out there with. Now,
Yeah.
you know, granted,
There may have been more, but.
there may have been more that we didn't see, but when we did have an officer there, and what the officers were telling me is, you know, if they were around, hanging out around the tracks there, usually people would see them, and then the sign's there.
Then they see the
Then
sign.
they see a sign. It's kind of like speeders. You know, when you put a marked cruiser out there, it's amazing how people slow down.
Right, yeah, so, I was just curious, when you did these warnings, did you take their names?
Yes,
Oh, okay, so they're on record.
right, yeah.
That's good, all right, so all the warnings.
And what we did with this first year of warnings, it was one warning, that's what we documented. So if we ran into the same person a second time, we already had it on record that they got a warning the first time, so they would have gotten a citation the second time for that.
Okay, all right, and were there citations issued?
No, we did not issue any
Okay.
citations.
All right, that's good, that's, for first year, that makes good sense, I mean, because it's,
I think you said, Chief, there was a total of about 10.
10, there's 7 over in the Commodore area, so that's.
is that right?
That's the one.
That seems very light to me for
It's like-
the whole
it's like
summer.
warnings, but we typically don't have an officer over at the music at the market.
Right,
But I know that the mayor tends to frequent the music at the market, and he would email or text Pat and I that he witnessed people over there with door cups. And there was no officer around.
right, I went to every music in the market, and I saw it a couple times. You know, adults just sitting there in their lounge chair, and it was wrong, but then I did see the beat cops, or whatever you want to call them, they're walking around, and they did go up to them, so
Right.
a couple times I did see them do their job,
You
and
know, and if
people are very friendly and say, oh, you know, usually it might be out-of-town people, they're not aware of the boundaries like the townies are.
Yeah, and if people are just relaxing, you know, having a nice time, then.
That's true,
There's no
and none of
issues with
it
it.
created a drunken, disorderly issue.
No, we had no issues like that. But, you know, again, this is something that, you know, the school board is going to have some input on.
That would be good that they're even willing to talk about it.
Yeah, and I don't know, and I know Mr. Hostler said he would bring that up with them, because I told him that we would be meeting tonight to begin these discussions, to look at boundaries. So, you know, he would, you know, bring that up and see if that's even something they want to consider or not.
So I remember that conversation, and that all came about because of the car show, long before music in the market occurred, because that used to be elsewhere.
Long before
With
Dora,
the-
too, really, you didn't have Dora back then.
Yeah, but the concern at that time was the people sitting there with their cars wanting something to do. They may
Right.
have their own, a drink or whatever, so, and that had to do with liability, obviously. I mean, that whole conversation was. So I'm assuming since the music in the market, music at the park, is a city function, do we assume liability for that since we're actually sponsoring that event?
It's not sponsored by us, it's not a city function, it's put on by Mr. Oaker.
No.
Music at the market is put on by the CBB.
Yeah.
It's put on by the
So
But
I'm
the car
assuming-
show, you're right about the car show.
So I'm assuming CVB has that liability insurance, correct? For,
They do have general liability. And I'm assuming that any event over there in the school requires that
yeah,
certificate of
correct,
liability.
yeah. So, because that removes supposedly,
Right.
in theory, their liability. So, okay. In terms of Walnut to Elm, so the library would not have an issue with having alcohol on grounds?
And that's where we'd have to get them in on a conversation.
Because I know that would include it, but we
Right.
didn't speak to that.
No, I've not spoken with them.
Okay.
And so, everybody would have that's where the public hearing would come in and the public notice, so, we can get the input from those individuals.
Just curious how they felt, because I don't even know who has jurisdiction over the library when it comes to something like that. Is that a city?
No, it's a standalone entity, it's a separate nonprofit.
Their board
Yes, their board.
With their board.
with people that we appointed,
Uh,
basically, right?
I don't believe we appoint all the people though.
Okay.
I think we appoint a portion of them. And we are their taxing authority
Mhm.
by statute, but they do have a board that operates the facility without interference from the city per se.
That would be easy to eliminate that piece of property boundary.
The challenge though is if we start eliminating pieces of property within the DORA, then it's hard for folks to remember
Yeah,
what's in
I
and
see
what's out,
that.
as we've seen.
Looking at this picture.
I know that I
yeah.
personally have been to the farmers market several times this summer, and the green space in front of inside, or it's actually not in front of, next to inside the five, had picnic tables, and there was many people there enjoying Dora. They weren't rowdy, they weren't causing a problem, but that is outside the Dora, and it's very hard to start signing all those little carve-outs, if you will. That's why the chief said he likes rectangles and squares. It's much easier for the patrons to understand, as well as the police officers to police.
Yeah. Found that
Well,
out.
because as you go up and down Louisiana, you've got the Mauer property on one side, which is obviously pretty significant personal property, and then the library on the other. So I'm not, so it'll be an interesting
Right.
discovery. So I am curious, out of those 10, was there anybody that was deemed to be intoxicated?
No.
Okay. These were just people who had carried their cup in the wrong location.
Right, and once the officer spoke with them, they're like, we didn't realize it, and went back.
Okay. Very good. Deborah, anything else?
I think initially when it was brought forward, I think people thought of it as a pub crawl, and it is not a pub crawl. I
No.
think that needs to be brought to their attention. That's what I constantly hear. So,
Yeah. No, it's not.
Thank you, Chief. Mark, you have anything else?
No, and you're saying, just to be clear, you said you would not be anything against going Walnut to Elm,
I would not be against it, no.
up to Fifth Street to front,
Yes.
okay? From an enforcement, standpoint, that's good to know, all right? So that's something we can all take in consideration. No, I don't have any other questions for the chief, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And anecdotally, I know one of the other items that gave us concern was the trash, the amount of trash that we might find or there might be. And
That's what I wanted to ask you.
And speaking with the service director, there has not been an inordinate amount of trash. There has been a large increase. Obviously, when there's special events downtown, that's when it kind of ebbs and flows. But on any given normal night, there's not been overflowing trash cans. As the chief mentions, they have, from time to time at those special events, such as the car shows and the music at the market, that's when they get cups in the grass, going down towards the boat club, on the stairs down there.
Mhm.
They have come across Dora cups. And on one occasion, they found one at like Hickory and 2nd Street.
Okay.
But it's not been very often.
Very rare, yeah.
And on the alley, the Burlingwood alley that fronts inside the five, they found it in that area, but it hasn't been chronic. So they haven't had the concern that they initially had. So we wanted to pass that along.
And there also hasn't been a lot of overtime needed to empty trash cans or anything like
And
that?
not specific to Durham, but rather specific to special events.
Events, yeah, like any normal.
And like we do on the weekends, we always have overtime on the weekends for
Mhm.
trash pickup uptown and in our parks. That's just part of our normal route. But on a day-to-day basis, it's not been an issue.
Have any businesses complained about people entering, that shouldn't, like if,
I've not had any complaints.
Okay.
I have not had any complaints.
The only complaints I've received are either those from myself because I've witnessed something, or I've received a text message from the mayor.
In fairness, I got those too.
You know, those two. I think I said pictures of one occasion.
I got those requests.
But it hasn't been from the general public. I have not had any calls from business owners. I've not had any calls.
no, business owners I talked to have actually appreciated it.
Anecdotally, again, I have heard, third person, that there are perhaps property owners downtown who purchase a Dora cup, and when it is empty, perhaps go into their own business and refill it and come out. But as the chief and I talked, that can happen anywhere, anytime. So that's.
You can't
But again,
stop
I'm
that.
hearing it like third person, so it's
No matter
not
what.
something I
Right.
witnessed or anything.
Those similar people would just take the cups home and bring them full with them.
Or they'd have a Yeti, even though it was.
Right, and yet you can't stop them from putting them in a commuter mug either. I mean, anybody who wants to drink bad enough's gonna drink. That's been going on since the beginning of time.
Phone calls to police, to service, to administration about problems.
Okay. And this sounds very similar to what I've heard from Sylvania too, that they've had just minimal problems like this, so. This is a good one-year review, I'd say,
Would you like to
overall.
hear
I would, if you would be so kind, Chris, we'd love to hear your perspective.
Absolutely. I'm very happy to be here. It's nice when good plans come to fruition. I talked, as we were planning this, on a lot of the overreaction that I was hearing. Having been through it in Sylvania, I knew exactly what to expect. And that is that the community loves it, the businesses love it. Representing all the liquor license holders, we love it. Talking from my personal numbers, we've sold 8,864 Dora glasses since May, the end of May. Our business has increased because, like we said, people are more willing to wait around if they have a drink. They're willing to wait outside. They don't crowd our waiting areas. People really enjoy it. Part of the reason they probably were in the green space is because we paid for bands all the time for people to enjoy. So for us, for other business owners, I spoke with Jane Worth, owner of Regaza. She owns a place in Sylvania and in Perrysburg. She loves Dora. She basically told me that this has been her best year yet since she's had a place in Perrysburg. So she's a very big supporter, that she told me. We are, as the business owners, we would love to have it expanded all the way to, I forget the boundaries.
Walnut,
Walnut.
Elm,
Walnut,
Fifth and
Elm,
Front.
and to Fifth Street. I know Fifth Street would like to be part of it. The food truck issue was an issue that we sort of knew was going to happen. People want to get food, they're walking across. We made it abundantly clear at all our locations with signs, with information packets, even on the cup. It shows exactly where you can go. I have website data here that basically shows that people, starting in July, we had 322 page loads. It decreased month by month to November, where we had 10 people visiting the site. We attribute that to people learning where they can and cannot go and reading the rules. You can even, 78% of those was on their phone as they're in the Dora district itself. So they're walking up the signs, they're walking up to locations, they're looking on their phone, and they're realizing, hey, we can't go there. So people are learning. As Chief said, very few warnings, no disorderly conducts, no arrests, no troublemaking. People are enjoying themselves. They're spending their time in downtown Perrysburg, which is very beneficial. Let's see, so I talked about, I'd like to have the green space added just for reference, and to make the chief's life easier. I would like to add where the food trucks are. If that doesn't happen, then maybe move the food trucks onto Third Street. That could always be something we can move towards. I would also like to bring up, we're in winter now, we don't sell very much drinks. People don't want to have a cold drink outside. I would like to propose a secondary cup, almost like a coffee cup, that would be allowed to have warm drinks in for the winter time. The door law by the Ohio liquor license says it just needs to be a clearly marked plastic or container. It does not say it has to be a clear container. So I would like to throw that out there, if anybody. But other than that, tremendous success. We'd love to see it keep going and being a focal point of this town.
Chris, I just want to clarify, you said that people can look on their phone and see the boundaries. Is there
We have a website.
an app for that, or is it your?
We have a
Just yours?
website, Perrysburgdora.com, I believe, and it loads to the page.
It loads a map?
Loads a map on there.
Oh, that's nice. It almost, it seems to me there would be something that could make their phone vibrate when they step out of the boundary if it's, I'm sure there's technology for that. I mean, GPS, you can, but that sounds like, everybody looks at their phones more than, and they look at the signs.
And on our city website, we put a link to their site so that if somebody's on the city website, they can find Dora and download the map as well.
Yeah, that's, Chris, you mentioned maybe, moving food trucks on Third. I know that was like that way before, but don't you need the parking?
That's closed anyway on farmer market days.
It's not so much the parking.
Oh, that's
it's
right.
just that
Booths are there.
there's booths there, so the reality is if you put the food trucks there, the booths might end up where the food trucks are, you could end up with the same
Yeah,
same
right,
issue.
right.
So whoever the new executive director is for the CVP, that's something that I can discuss with them, the future of farmers market and how it's laid out.
And another question, do you know anything about Rosie's going in next to you? Is that something that's happening soon, or does anyone know? Is that going to be another applicant that we'll have?
I think Rosario's is certainly going to apply for a liquor permit.
It's Rosario's, it's not Rosie's, or?
Correct.
It's the same family.
It's a, kind of a takeoff, it'll be a different name.
Okay, and they're going to have liquor and
I'm assuming that they
Probably.
are.
Yeah, they'll have wine.
so,
We don't have to give blessings to this. If you are in the DORA boundary and the state of Ohio grants you a liquor permit, the state of Ohio will look up to see whether or not that property is in the DORA. And if it is, they will use that liquor permit and OGR designation, which makes it part of the DORA. We don't have to do anything. It's just so when people get their permits within the boundaries we have, they're part of the DORA.
but if we just stop it at his green space, then we're not including them. We may want to go,
It's already the front of.
oh, the front of it does go? Okay. Oh, that's the L shape you're talking about.
But it doesn't make any, I know why it was done when it was done, but it doesn't make any sense now.
Okay. All right, so that's not an issue then, if they're good to go if they do, when they do open. And the container, he mentioned that container, does that sound right to you if it's not clear?
In
is
the
that-
proposal we wrote, it says a clear container, but I would like to
Yeah,
ask to add an additional container, almost like a coffee cup.
I just wondered if the police would rather see a
Okay.
What is the difference? Is it,
Almost like think of a Starbucks cup.
Oh, okay.
so it would be a seasonal cup? And that, is it in our language that it has to be clear?
Right, so that'd be an amendment.
It'd be an amendment.
That we'd have to look at if we're going to amend anything else with the door, that would have to do with.
Although the cup issue would not have to go to the public the way, it's required under state law that if you're gonna change the boundary, we have to do public hearings and all of those things. But much like we made the amendments earlier to take out the corporation language and everything, I believe that we could change the cup issue with just an ordinance. without showing a variance, if
Nice.
that was something that you all were interested in doing.
You know, if it's an insulated cup, it may be pretty popular in the summer as well. Help keep the drink cold. I'm just put it, if you need to keep it warm, you need to keep it cold. I'm just putting that out
He
there.
wants them to drink them faster, so they'll buy another
A
one.
lot more.
But Chief, I was curious if you're, from a police standpoint, if you wanna visually see what's in that cup. Is that more important to you? That doesn't matter?
No, because, I mean, you could have, rum and coke
Yeah.
in there.
Oh, it can look like a Coke.
It's gonna look like Coke.
All right.
So,
I got you.
yeah.
All right.
You could put the same design on a Starbucks type cup, I would not be opposed to that.
Okay.
Would you be okay having both?
Because I don't think it says clear in the ordinance.
Yeah, our ordinance does not say clear.
It says marked, right?
It says, shall only be served in plastic bottles or other plastic containers which are no larger than 16 ounces, and shall be provided by the qualified permit holders in a readily identifiable container that identifies the name of the establishment that is serving the beverage. But it does say plastic container versus a paper styrofoam type product.
That's minor. That's a minor
Well, styrofoam
detail.
is made out of plastic, isn't it? Maybe a little
This was pulled from,
I have the Ohio. Some sort of plastic bottle.
or container, in some sort of plastic bottle or container within the door.
only plastic bottles and plastic container. So we don't have anything in our ordinance that says it has to be clear. We didn't, and there's nothing in the state law that says it has to be clear. For some reason, everybody's very into plastic, so it has to be plastic.
It used to be in the plastic.
According to ORC and to us, because we just drafted our map to the ORC. So you could have winter cups that weren't clear. That we could,
But I don't know if they could be paper. Like a Starbucks cup. I'm sure there's some amount of plastic in the Starbucks cup.
Well, it sounds like we, go ahead, I'm sorry. Go on.
Chris, would you be paying for these cups?
Yeah, we pay for them now.
So I think that's something that can be researched in terms of what product. Sounds like our limitation is it needs to be plastic.
our limitation is the Ohio Revised Code limitation, which says plastic.
Okay.
And that's, the only reason that's our limitation is that's the ORC
Well,
limitation.
We can certainly check if anyone else in Ohio has made this alteration, seen it. You can't be the first one that's come up with asking for a winter drink container, right?
I mean, if they were to, permit holders were to call the state and get.
Yeah, you could probably find that out through the state yourself, couldn't you?
I can email the people that sort of gave us the plastic.
I can't imagine us having a problem with it, one plastic or paper, styrofoam, whatever, as long as it's marked.
If he can.
I'll email the people that have the blessing, give us the blessing for Dorothy, and say, so this question came up. What are other jurisdictions doing? Can we?
I don't think anybody, some of our staff is like, hey, can we sell a warm drink? And with the cups we have now, they're biodegradable, they will break down at a certain temperature, so we'd like
Would we appreciate it?
more of an insulated cup for winter that.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. Let me see what, if I get any response from them.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I'm not much, enough of a drinker to know what warm alcoholic drink is there, a hot toddy?
Oh, hard.
I guess I'm,
I'm not a drinker, and I can say that I think that it should be something environmentally pleasing, whatever that would be.
We,
a hot toddy.
there's coffees with drinks, there's
Yeah, mulled ciders. mulled
Oh, okay.
wine.
warm ciders.
Or cider.
I'll have to try something like that.
We're gonna have to bring Mark over during off hours, Chris, so that he knows what we're talking about.
We're open till then.
So I get a sense that this won't be the last time we have this conversation about modifications, so.
I guess my question is, what would you like to do next?
Well, personally, I think we need to find out the level of support that the library and I'm gonna even say Bob Mauer, Perrysburg Landing, because those are gonna be two thoroughfares, and the schools have. If we're
Would you
gonna,
like us to reach out to those?
well, I'm not gonna, I believe in private initiative, so I think that that's a dynamic that Fifth Street and, so if, Patrick, I know you reached out to the schools, right? And they'll have that conversation. So certainly, so I'm not sure where to go with this because the city does benefit from it. And I know, Mark, you're an advocate, and I don't know if you want to approach the library?
Oh, I'd be glad to, yeah. I talked to someone at the library.
Any suggestions?
I would advise staying with the boundaries that are currently in place and
Understood.
not going beyond that. Because I think you may be looking at problems in the future that you may not want to deal with.
So I guess if you're asking what should the role of the city be,
What would you like, do you want anything creative for the next meeting? What would you like?
I think we need clarification on cups. I think we need to see the level of interest in expanding down to Fifth Street, especially with those three entities I just mentioned, because they're going to be they're in the middle of it. And we'll find out what their feedback is.
Okay, and we definitely know that inside the five, as well as the city, would like to at least fix the border as it pertains to the grassy knoll right there by inside the five. We know that the people who those properties, you're requesting that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a feeling if we don't get the blessing of the schools, then we would be really creating a problem if we allow it over at inside the five, but don't allow it across the street at school. You know, got to keep that rectangle.
Not inside the five, you mean Fifth Street?
I'm sorry about that, Fifth Street, I always say them wrong. Yes, if we allow Fifth Street without the schools blessing, then we're just going to create more temptation to cross that street right there and just create more problems. So we almost need the school's blessing in order to get all the way to Fifth Street, I would think, don't you? And especially to keep with what the chief said about keeping the rectangles a little easier for.
Well, and I include the library and.
Yeah, that we got to get their
So.
blessings too. So we do need all three. I don't think we could do it without all three. Yeah.
So I'm not sure that answered your question.
You did. That's okay.
I think through private conversation and actual outreach, then we need to find out what those parties think.
Okay.
Because it would take both board at the library and the board, school board to approve something like that, so.
And then the private owner, Mr. Mauer. Right?
He doesn't have to approve it.
No, but
You can have his opinion, but if
yeah, yeah, you're right. Just like any other private owner
This would
would.
just be the right of way that we're talking about.
Oh.
Ordering the front.
Yes, that's right. It's just the fronts of these buildings. They're
I
don't.
mean, in that case, unless you're actually taking it all the way to Walnut, then it's.
Which is the proposal, which means this parking lot would be included in that,
But
so.
he can allow or disallow people on his own private property to.
But it'd be nice if we allowed it with those picnic tables that we have in front of, right there, Perry's Landing, right? In the right of way.
In the city right of way, yes.
So
That'd be nice to be able to let the participants use those.
So we'll do some reach out and.
we will as well.
Mhm.
I think I'll get together with Chris, and see what kind of proposal you all actually want to submit.
If I heard you right, though,
Right.
if we include the green space in front of, inside the five, then we need that's a public
We still have
hearing.
to have a public hearing, we still have to do all of those things, yes,
So
because
what is the redevelopment idea in terms of building? They were going to build a structure there, I thought. Is that still long-term or?
It's still long-term, I think it'll be a year out or so before that happens, so we'll go through another summer before.
Is there fencing? I mean, because sometimes you can do fencing that would allow you to, correct?
You could do fencing it worked out with the property owner who's fencing there, but then you'd have to expand his permit premise out. But then that would be, wouldn't necessarily be in the DORA, it'd be served, and you could be in there.
That's what I'm saying, you could fence
Right.
outside
We
the,
won't be able to use the door cover.
gotcha, okay.
Because it would just be part of your premises at that point.
And we won't be sending glasses out there, so it'd be a different.
Right, understood. I was just wondering how, because if we can't, if Walnut to Elm does not work, then it would be that little sliver. They have public hearings for that, and that's the only reason I was asking for that clarification. Very good. So we'll revisit this, we'll do our little bit of due diligence and
We'll
come
get our
back.
intelligence on our end as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would like to just say once again, your thoughts are good about, Mary's thoughts are good about the library, Bob Mauer, and the schools. However, I think we just need to stay with what we have. If he wants to have his green space area, do that part, but I don't think we need to be expanding throughout the other areas.
Understood. So I think that concludes the DORA conversation. And I know we had some conversation about having the fire chief speak to the budget, and we will reserve that for when the amended budget comes up. Does that sound right?
There will be an item on there for the fire.
I understand that, yes. So is there anything else for the good of the order?
Okay.
Good meeting.
So, and I would just like to say, since this is the last safety committee meeting, as we sit here currently, I'd like to say it was great serving with you, Deborah, here on safety committee, and
Thank you.
Wish you the best.
Thank you very much.
Mark?
All right. Same here, Deborah. We may not have always seen eye to eye and everything, but you know, our hearts are all in the right place,
I care mostly about the citizens of Perrysburg, and I always will.
and it shows.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we will consider this committee meeting adjourned.